The medieval period occurred in Europe after the fall of ancient Rome. During the medieval period, a unique style of art was produced. Artists mainly painted religious icons, which were painted to look perfect and holy. They used lots of gold paint and bright colours, but the paintings rarely looked real or lifelike. The medieval period lasted until the 14th century and the beginning of the Renaissance. In the 14th century, in Florence, Italy, people started to become inspired by the culture and art of the classical Greeks and Romans, and this influenced them greatly when they were creating their own art. It was known as a rebirth of the ancient culture, and it was here that some of the most influential ideas in the history of art, science, and architecture were discovered. Do you know what this painting is called? It's known as the Mona Lisa, and it was painted during the Renaissance by an artist called Leonardo da Vinci. But why is this painting so famous? How was it different from medieval art? Have a look at her skin. What do you notice about the colour? The colour of her skin is very realistic. Da Vinci is painting her skin and everything in the picture as he sees it, as it actually is. What about the skin of this medieval painting? Is it lifelike? Let's take a closer look at the painting, at the paint Da Vinci used. This paint is known as oil paint. Oil paint was made by mixing colour pigments with oil. It dried very slowly, which meant that if they made a mistake, or if they wanted to make an improvement the next day to the painting, they were able to do so because the paint wouldn't be dry. They were also able to paint on thin coats of paint that they could almost see through and build up layers to create realistic textures and lifelike effects. This was a new invention, as in medieval paintings they had used quick drying egg tempera. This meant that they had to plan their painting very carefully, working on one small patch at a time before the paint dried. There was no room for mistakes. See how the artist uses colour and paint in this medieval painting. Look at their clothes. Do they look real? Why do you think that? There is not a lot of texture in the painting, and the colours are very flat and unrealistic. Often, they put gold leaf on the paintings to show just how precious the religious paintings or religious icons actually were. Have a look in the background. What do you see? Now look in the background of this medieval picture. During the medieval times, most of the paintings had religious themes because the church were the main group behind the creation of art. However, during the Renaissance, Italian merchants became very rich. They were buying spices and silk from Asia and selling them to Northern Europeans. They used this wealth to become patrons of the arts. Patrons such as Lorenzo de' Medici, who was patron to Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, often helped architects and artists by paying for their paintings, sculptures, and new buildings. This meant that themes not only included religion, but also a wide variety of new themes, as respect for the highly paid artists grew, meaning they were free to paint whatever they liked. This included landscapes and nature, portraits of leaders and their wives, while a great deal of religious pictures were still being produced. Look at the detail of Da Vinci's painting. See the way her hands look like they're almost real. Look at the way he shades them to show the bumps and joints of her hand. Her hand looks almost 3D-like. Do you know what 3D means? Which of these shapes is 3D? A or B? B is the 3D shape. Which of these is the 3D shape? A or B? How do you know? B is the 3D shape. Draw what this table looks like in 3D. Leonardo da Vinci, the famous Renaissance artist who painted the Mona Lisa, studied the muscles of the body to help him to make his paintings look more realistic and 3D. These are his sketches. See how he uses shading and measuring lines to make the muscles more obvious. There was one other thing that stood out over anything else in Renaissance art. a look at this painting by Uccello. What do you notice? Look closely at the background. Why is the dog smaller here than the dogs here? This painting technique is called perspective. Perspective means that things far away are smaller while things near are bigger. The Renaissance was important because it changed the whole way artists went about painting. Colours in painting were more realistic. Oil paint was used because it was easier to paint with. There were new themes such as landscapes and portraits, but religious paintings were still produced. Paintings looked 3D. The technique of perspective was introduced, where things far away look smaller and things nearer look bigger. Which of these paintings is from the Renaissance? A or B? How do you know? That's right. A is Renaissance art.